Hello, everyone. We're going to let our participants join. We'll begin the webinar in just a moment. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, for this pre-bid webinar for California High-Speed Rail's request for qualifications for rail systems engineering services, or RESIS, as you'll hear it referred to throughout this presentation. My name is Melissa Figueroa. I'm the Chief of Strategic Communications for California's High-Speed Rail project, and I look forward to joining my colleagues here for this presentation today. We can go ahead and go to the first slide. So an overview of our agenda for the remaining hour that we have together today. Again, I will be sort of your master of ceremonies, if you will, for this presentation today. I'll be followed by Katrina Blair for an overview of our small business program, followed by Bruce Armistead, our Chief of Rail Operations and Delivery, for a procurement overview, and then Lisa Crowfoot, our attorney who is handling conflict of interest. If you want to go to the next slide. Some housekeeping information for all of your information here. The web page where you'll find this is highspeedrail.hsr.ca.gov/business opportunities. You'll find the contracts there. You can also go to our main page, hsr.ca.gov, and click on business opportunities. Under the contract opportunities tab, you would select rail systems engineering services. On that website, you'll find the video of the pre-bid, a PowerPoint presentation, and a registrant list. And we are not taking questions during this presentation today. However, you can, and you're encouraged to submit questions to rses@hsr.ca.gov. Again, rses@hsr.ca.gov for questions. And those questions are due by August 8th, 2023. You can go to the next slide. I'll be giving you a short overview of the California High-Speed Rail project where it stands today, and then we'll continue on with the presentation from my fellow colleagues. Go to the next slide. So a quick snapshot of the project as a whole. It's split into two phases, 500 miles total for phase one that goes from San Francisco all the way down to Los Angeles, Anaheim in Southern California, 500 miles in total. We are working to complete the first 119 miles of that project right now in the Central Valley of California. We're under active construction. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. Phase two of the project by statute is from Sacramento down to Merced, and then in Southern California from the Los Angeles region into San Diego. That extends another 300 miles, and that work has not yet begun. It is unfunded at this time. The system as a whole will go 220 miles an hour. For phase one, we'll have up to 24 stations between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and the first 4 are under design right now, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. Go to the next slide. Here's a look at where we are today. In 2023, we have 119 miles under active construction. That's that yellow line in the middle of your screen between Madera and Poplar Avenue north of Bakersfield. We have 52 miles in addition to that under advanced design that will take us into Merced and south into Bakersfield proper, connecting the cities of Merced, Fresno, and Bakersfield in the Central Valley of California. We are environmentally clearing the full 500 miles of the phase one system between San Francisco and Los Angeles. Today, we are proud to say we have about 422 of those 500 miles environmentally cleared. We're also funding partners in programs in Southern and Northern California. We are funding partners for the Caltrain electrification project in the Bay Area, and also funding partners for the Los Angeles Union Station modernization project at LAUS in LA. We're also funding partners and have some completed work for grade separations in Northern and Southern California as well. We are working on station design for the first 4 Central Valley stations. That's in Merced, Fresno, Kings Tulare, and Bakersfield, all very unique cities with all very unique challenges. And we're looking forward to continuing dialogue with those regional partners to make sure those stations are wonderful opportunities for economic development in those areas. We have a memorandum of understanding with Brightline West. That's a privately funded project that is in the Southern California region that will ultimately connect to our project and take passengers out into the Las Vegas area in Nevada. Go to the next slide. A look ahead at what's coming up. We will be completing the first Central Valley construction segment. That's that southernmost section we refer to as construction package 4 later this summer, early fall. We also expect to have the draft environmental document out for Palmdale to Burbank later this year. Caltrain electrification anticipates its completion in late 2024. The Rosecrans Marquardt grade separation, that's one of the most noted by the PUC, most dangerous grade separations in the state in Southern California. We're funding partners on that. They anticipate completion in that project in 2024 as well. We're going to continue advanced design as funding becomes available statewide. However, continue advanced design for this for Central Valley stations, and that work will carry on, and the contract for that was awarded in October of 22. Next slide. Something we're quite proud of here at High Speed Rail is the jobs that this project creates. To date, we have created more than 11,000 labor jobs, men and women on the job sites every day, about 1,000 plus at our 30 plus job sites. We have 70% of our workers are from disadvantaged communities, 761 small businesses employed in our small business lead. We'll talk more about that in just a moment and go in depth with you on that opportunity there. We are leading in sustainability. This is a green project by nature. We will run on 100% renewable energy, take about 400,000 cars off the road annually in an operation. And while we're under construction, we are green as well, using Tier 4 equipment on construction, and in the next construction segments using ZEB fleets as well. Then go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over now to Katrina Blair, who's going to talk more about our small business program.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katrina Blair, and I'm the Chief of Process and Program Development, and I oversee the Authority's Small Business Program. Let's see. Okay, thank you. The Authority currently has a 30% small business goal, which includes 10% goal for disadvantaged business enterprise, or DBE as we refer to it, and 3% for disabled veteran business enterprise, or DVBE, as we refer to it as well. We currently have a good number of businesses that are already performing on the contract, about 773 that represent regions from all over the state. And as you can see on the map, we've highlighted where those businesses are located. Additionally, we have about 28 certified DBEs that are from outside of the state. And in order to meet the goal in accordance with what is defined in the small business program, you will need to designate a small business officer that is responsible for being the point of contact for all things small business. And that person will work closely with my team. For example, if there's a need for you to host a workshop, or if you would like to garner interest for any procurements or task orders you release under your contract with the Authority, you can work with my team for that. It's very important that you follow the protocol for adding small businesses to your project, and that you're using small businesses that have been approved. During the course of your contract, if you're looking for more businesses to add, you can leverage my team. We'll be happy to assist you in the effort to find qualified businesses to perform. One of the best ways to do that is outreach. Once the contract is executed, my team will hold a kickoff meeting, which will include members of the awarded team, the small business officer, Authority staff, which includes contract manager, small business compliance team. And in this meeting, we'll review the small business requirements in more detail. Next slide. The Authority is committed to having diverse small businesses on this project. And although we're not a certifying agency, we partner with a couple of different agencies to utilize their certification designations you see listed on the slide. Anytime you want to bring a new business on board, they have to be certified with these departments. And their certifications have to be current and they have to be valid. So you want to make sure during the course of the contract that all small business certifications are continuously up to date. Most of these certifications listed here carry a 1 to 2 year term before they have to renew. But it is the responsibility of the small business to make sure that their certifications are current. The California Department of General Services offers the state certifications that are required. So those designations are small business, micro business, small business for the purpose of public works, which we refer to as SBPW. This includes firms who specifically work on public works contracts, and the SBPW certification is kind of a benefit to California firms who've graduated out of the smaller programs. So if you will be working with firms who maybe have been on this project already and who have grown as a result and are no longer qualified for the small business certification, the SBPW goes up to 36 million in gross annual receipts, and they can still qualify for a small business. DGS also offers an additional state certification, which is the Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise, also known as DVBE. We also recognize a couple of federal certifications. The California Unified Certification Program, or CUCP is what we call it, for the DBE program. And this certification is offered actually by a consortium of agencies throughout California, but Caltrans is the agency in Sacramento that offers this certification statewide. There are various other agencies that offer the certification, including in the Bay Area and Southern California. So businesses are able to choose the agency in their region. So if you have any firms that are trying to join your team with this certification, please let them know that it takes several months to get certified with this designation. We also accept the 8A Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program certification from the U.S. Small Business Administration, but please do keep in mind that any of the federal certifications do take a little bit longer to process, but these certifications listed here are the only ones that we accept currently, and they do have to be certified at the time that they're brought onto the contract, during the execution of the contract and throughout the duration of the contract. Next slide. Okay, so for small business teams, we get the question about exclusivity all the time. So the authority does not prohibit subconsultants or subcontractors to be exclusive to one offeror, but we do strongly discourage this practice. Next slide. And lastly, this slide covers our Connect HSR vendor registry. We encourage all businesses to register with Connect HSR. It's free, it's online, and it's simple to complete. Businesses who register with Connect HSR will always be notified when there are procurement opportunities or workshops that are hosted by the small business program or by our prime contractors. Oftentimes, we find that businesses are struggling with certain areas such as certified payroll or audit requirements, invoicing, things of that nature. So we'll hold workshops or outreach events and have guest appearances from departments like Department of Industrial Relations or DGS or Caltrans and other organizations that offer support for small businesses. So there's all kinds of opportunities to bring businesses on this project. And they can learn about high-speed rail and how we do business. So we do encourage businesses to get registered and Connect HSR. Additionally, please make sure you attend the small business workshop that we have scheduled for later today at 1 p.m. We'll have an overview of the small business compliance requirements and a certification overview from Caltrans and DGS. So thank you for your time today. If you have any questions for the small business program, please send us an email through the email specified earlier, rses@hsr.ca.gov. And I'll now turn it over to Bruce Armistead for his presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Katrina. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through an overview of the rail systems engineering contract. And the purpose of this contract, we're issuing an RFQ to receive SOQ, Statements of Qualifications, for rail system engineering services. This is a professional services contract, and it's critical to HSR verifying all technical requirements are met by the civil, track, systems, train sets, and stations contractors, each of which will have separate and distinct responsibilities. Next slide, please. Background and contract terms. The current rail systems engineering services are provided by the RDP contract. The RESIS scope, or rail systems engineering scope, was not included in the program delivery services contract, which is the successor to the RDP. The management of the RESIS contract will be under the authority's Rails and Operations Delivery branch. The contract term will be 5 years with an option to 5 years 4 months with an option to extend. And the not to exceed contract value is $73.2 million for the 5-year 4-month term. This will be a qualifications-based procurement. Fair and reasonable fees and costs will be negotiated with the top-ranked offeror prior to executing a contract. And as was mentioned earlier by Katrina, it's a 30% small business utilization goal, which includes the 10% disadvantaged business enterprise utilization goal and a 3% disabled veteran business enterprise utilization goal. Next slide, please. The rail systems engineering consultant will provide a core group of rail engineers to support the authority in a partnering role with expertise in traction power and catenary, signal and train control and communications, network and general program integration, high voltage, track, stations, and station integration, rail equipment and operations to develop all the rail-related scope, engineering, and plans. Review of all civil designs to ensure they comply with the authority's design criteria manual. Track and systems requirements are met by those civil designs, and that no elements will interfere with rail construction, rail maintenance, and/or rail operations. Respond to all special requests and technical evaluations which arise beyond the construction and plan reviews, including environmental documents and preliminary design reviews. Support the authority in integration of the elements of the rail system and in the management of these interfaces. Requirements oversight support for civil, track, and systems elements, including train sets and stations. And it will manage the risk register and system safety in all safety cases related to the civil, track, systems, train sets, and stations. Next slide, please. Background on revenue service certification. The RESIS consultant is a critical to support the certification efforts. HSR project will be a certified railroad that is ready for passenger service from Merced to Bakersfield. The authority has active civil construction for the first 119 miles, as was mentioned earlier. And we have track and systems contractors that will follow the civils, and then train set certification, and a heavy maintenance facility. Next slide, please. A little background on the European normatives, and again, going into how we reach certification. The EU regulatory approach in the past, each of the 27 countries had their own standards and regulations. For example, a train that was designed and certified for operation in Germany would not necessarily be certified to operate in France. Subsequently, the EU has developed standards and regulations and a formal process that allows for interoperability throughout the EU. So technical specifications for interoperability were developed, and they developed the European normatives as the process for the specification and demonstration of reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety. And they also have, there's a quite a number of these, but the ones that are of note are the ones you see there. EN 50126, 128, and 129 that cover, as I mentioned, RAMs and software for signaling and communications and process control. Next slide, please. The FRA has the rules of general applicability that are established in the CFRs. These are primarily design-based regulations and universally applied to all railroads in the US. I will say that the CFRs now include reference to the ENs as a way to develop our safety cases. The published rules in the CFRs may not adequately cover design innovations, and the FRA may allow for rules of particular applicability. These such rules are applicable to specifically identified applications and safety cases. Risk assessments and hazard assessments and mitigations are benchmarked against the regulatory requirements. Next slide, please. The contracts to be supported by the rail systems engineering consultant are the track contract, the systems contract, train sets, stations, and construction management. Next slide, please. This chart is intended to show the contracts that will be supported by rail systems engineering, and it's best read from the bottom up. Train sets, train manufacturing, facilities design and testing and commissioning, that will be the responsibility of our train sets contractor. The track and systems contracts will do their own design, modifications, and construction and installation. The construction manager would oversee site safety and security, construction oversight, certification support, integration support at that level, and contract management support. So documentation and handling of submittals, all that would be a construction manager. And the rail systems engineering services would help us with asset management, certification, it would help with integration, and it would help with rail engineering. So the rail systems engineering services would assure that the contracts that are shown below all meet the requirements of the High-Speed Rail Authority. Now, these individual contracts will be contracts with the authority. However, the rail systems engineering services will help us to ensure that they meet the requirements. Next slide, please. Entry into passenger service, and this chart is also best read from the bottom up. In system readiness to the left, we have trains readiness or train sets readiness. We have track and systems readiness. We have civil. We have stations and civil readiness. That all leads to our system readiness with the safety plans and cases, tests, and all the technical documentation will comprise our system readiness documents. Similarly, with the operational readiness, we'll have maintenance readiness, we'll have administrative readiness, we have the emergency readiness, which includes all emergency drills, first responders, and how each of the entities will react in the case of an emergency. And once those safety cases and training and rules and procedures are developed, that makes up our operational readiness. When these two things, system readiness and operational readiness, are accomplished, it leads to trial running. We will then achieve trial running. We'll get our railway ready for transportation services. There may be a trial running committee involved, and this leads to our safety certification and run completion test certificates. Again, the certifications by the regulatory bodies and authorities, the Railway Authority, in this case FRA, tells us that they concur with our safety cases, our systems, our safety certification, and we are then allowed to enter into passenger service. And the Rail Systems Engineering Services contract will assist us with making sure that these activities all meet the High-Speed Rail Authority's requirements. Next slide, please. Procurement process details. As you can see there, we are on the California State Contracts Register. The link there for Cal eProcure will take you to the RFQ HSR 2321. Updates, including responses to written questions in the RFQ demo, will be will be posted. The authority's webpage and email address for questions is also shown here. And our webpage will include the presentations, videos, these presentations, the videos, and a registration list. And of course, submit your questions, as was mentioned earlier, to the resis@hsr.ca.gov. Next slide, please. Procurement schedule. RFQs are advertised in eProcure, today's pre-bid conference, a small business informational workshop. The deadline for questions is August 8th, and statements of SOQs are due in September. So September 18th is when the SOQs are due here to the authority. The anticipated NOPA, or Notice of Proposed Award, will be released in October. And then we want to go to our board meeting in November to get authorization for contract execution and notice to proceed within that same month. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to introduce Lisa Crowfoot to go over the organizational conflicts of interest. Lisa?
Bruce. Hi, my name is Lisa Crowfoot, and I'm with the authority's in-house Office of Legal Counsel, and I'm going to give you a general overview of our conflict of interest policy, and also talk about some very specific points that apply specifically to this RESIS procurement. Next slide. All entities desiring to enter into a contract with the authority must comply with its organizational conflict of interest policy. The policy was recently revised in June of 2023, but the revisions should not impact prior conflict determinations that any entity received for the RESIS procurement. And I will talk a little bit more about that in later slides. And the question we always get is, why do we have an organizational conflict of interest policy? And the reason we have it is because our federal grants require it, and our state requirements require it, but also it ensures a fair and transparent process. It maximizes competition and minimizes exposure to bid protests. But importantly, it ensures that we're compliant with state and federal laws. Next slide. The organizational conflict of interest has a fairly straightforward definition. It's defined as the circumstances arising out of a contractor's existing or past activities, business or financial interest, familiar relationships, contractual relationships, or organizational structure, such as a business entity that you might be in business with as a joint venture. And those relationships, if they would result in impairment or potential impairment of a contractor's ability to render impartial assistance or advice to the authority, would be problematic, or if those relationships resulted in an unfair competitive advantage for any contractor bidding or proposing on an authority procurement. And we look at both actual impropriety, but also something that might have the appearance of impropriety, regardless of whether that perception is accurate. Next slide. Two general situations that we typically see often. An example of a contractor having an unfair competitive advantage might be where a contractor has inside or non-public information about a procurement, or if a contractor provided services to the authority related to the procurement and then bids on it. Examples of a contractor's objectivity being compromised is when a contractor has a contract under contract A, we'll call it, and they're in a position to oversee or direct work to themselves under contract B, and we can't enforce mitigation. So those are some of the examples of things that we typically look for and that are the most common in terms of organizational conflicts of interest. Next slide. A common misperception is that contractors are generally conflicted out of a new procurement simply because they have a current or prior contract with the authority. But a vast majority of the conflict of interest determinations that our office performs determines that the contractor may participate in the desired procurement. The authority has to recognize that its goals and must be balanced. We want to make sure that we're not restricting the pool of contractors while at the same time making sure that we have a fair procurement process. If a potential conflict is organized, the policy requires the authority to look for ways of implementing mitigation or safeguards to work around that conflict of interest issue. And safeguards are commonly applied to allow contractors to participate in our procurements. Next slide. So a quick overview of the OCOI process. Interested contractors should first review our policy, and you can find the policy via a link on our website or via the RFQ for this procurement. Review that and make a determination about whether you think you have a conflict of interest or not. If you have any concerns, please send a request to the authority's legal office. The last slide will have that link to the email, and the link to the email is also in the RFQ. We will probably ask you for some follow-up information, such as the dates of your contracts. Has the work been performed? What kind of work were you performing there? And what kind of work do you hope to perform on the RESIS contract? And then we will do an internal investigation, and we will submit a written determination back to the requesting entity. So you'll have that information. And then in conjunction with your SOQ submission, you'll also see a Form B or a Form C, which is an organizational conflict of interest disclosure, in which you will enter any information that you need to disclose. Next slide. Now, this is specific to the RESIS determination. This is a new procurement. However, the scope of work is the same as the prior RESIS RFQ. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, the authority has revised its conflict policy since the prior RESIS RFQ. You do not need to request a new conflict of interest determination unless your circumstances have changed in a material way that impacts the prior determination, such as you've entered into a new contract with the authority. If you don't mind going back to the last slide. There we go, thank you. You've entered into a new contract with the authority on the high-speed rail project. If you're going to do a different scope of work with this current RESIS procurement than you were previously, if you formed a business partnership with a company that has a contract with a high-speed rail project, if you're undertaking a different scope of work or a different role on the current RESIS procurement. So if none of those things have happened for you, there's no significant difference. You do not need to request a new conflict determination. However, I will note that our office will be reaching out to those of you that did receive a prior determination, just to confirm via email exchange that you have not had any changed circumstances. Otherwise, if you've not requested prior determination, please look at the policy. And if you think you have an issue you want to disclose or discuss with our office, please follow the process I discussed previously. Next slide. And this is the slide to follow. If you have any conflict of interest issues you want to discuss, please send it to legal@hsr.ca.gov. And I mentioned the steps you'll follow previously, but we'll ask for some information. We'll provide you a written determination. And if you do not agree with the determination, you can raise additional relevant facts after that time. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Katrina and Bruce as well. And this is our final slide for the presentation this morning. Again, if you have any questions regarding this procurement, please direct them to the email address you see on your screen, resis@hsr.ca.gov. You can also visit our website. That webpage will include a video of this pre-bid, a PowerPoint presentation as well as the registrant list. Again, you can find that at hsr.ca.gov. Click on business opportunities, and then look under the contracts out for bid area and select rail systems engineering services, or RESIS. Again, any questions, please direct them to the email address resis@hsr.ca.gov. And we hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.